I'm excited today to introduce our newest simulation called CapsimCore, and it's the subject of today's webinar. The CapsimCore is going to be focused on introductory level courses, and I'm very pleased to introduce Brendan Langen to talk about it. Brendan is our Senior Product Manager here at Capsim. He's been with Capsim for over 5 years, recently received his MBA from the Warrington Graduate School of Business at the University of Florida. Brendan has led the development of several Capsim products and has led the development of CapsimCore since its inception. Very pleased to have him here, and Brendan, take it away.
Thank you, Carter. As Carter mentioned, I'm Brendan, and happy to be with you guys here today. We're going to go through a brief rundown of the agenda for today's webinar, and there are 3 key things that we're going to talk about today. First is the product's origin, or essentially how we came to a decision to make CapsimCore. We'll find out a little bit about what went into that thought process. From there, we'll move on to the curriculum fit of CapsimCore within your business school. So these are the kind of questions that we'll be able to answer of, what classes can CapsimCore fit into, and what are some of the ideal situations for it to be used. And then finally, we'll go through some of the most impactful features of the simulation and how they tie back to your teaching. Essentially, why should you use CapsimCore? We'll wrap everything up, and Carter will come back on, and we will have a joint Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions throughout our presentation, throw them into the chat box, and we will get back to them at the end of the presentation. So as we get started, let's talk about the origin. Where did this product come from? And as many of you are already aware, CapsimCore is our newest business simulation. We will be launching this product August 1st to all users. Over the past few months, we've been working with a wide array of customers, testing some design ideas and concepts, helping us understand how people will use the simulation, and testing the capabilities of our platform. This has been a really helpful process for us. We've had many beta users go through the simulation, and they've provided us with some really great feedback thus far. When we were at the earliest stages of planning CapsimCore, we really made it a point to talk to our current user base as well as our target audience. We knew who we were looking to approach, and from those conversations, we were able to actually take away 3 key things from our customers, about the learning solution that you wanted. The first thing was you were looking for something that was highly engaging and fun for students. This is something that is not going to be seen as a tedious task for students to go through. Second, you were looking for something that both looked and felt like a game, to really put the students in a game-like scenario, and something with an updated, intuitive user interface, something that created a great user experience for your students. And then finally, you're looking for something that got students excited about business, whether this was entering the business school or understanding a bit more about the individual subjects they could learn and study throughout the business school experience. And from there, we really needed to design our internal product strategy, and these findings helped us do so. So our solution is twofold. On the student side, we looked to create something that allowed for intuitive decision-making, that allowed students to really understand what they had to do to run a business, as well as something that focused on the core business learning concepts. This is something that will help your students understand the business basics and really point them in a direction of maybe where they want to spend some time studying. And for professors, we were looking for something that was really easy to use, simple to administer, and had a variety of add-ons that you could use throughout your courses. This is something that wouldn't just position the product in one course. So where does this simulation fit in for you? After we had time to think through this internal product strategy, we needed to think how we could use this across the business school. And luckily for us, we had customers who were already doing this for us. Throughout the beta process, we had professors using the simulation in a variety of different courses. And this meant that we could find a lot of unique ways that the simulation could apply across multiple disciplines. So ultimately, we developed something that is simple enough to be used by lower-level undergraduate classes. We wanted to make sure that students who didn't have an understanding of business could jump in and meaningfully learn business concepts through the simulation. Now, some courses that the product could fit in here are your Intro to Business, your Principles of Management, Fundamentals, those intro-level, lower-level undergraduate classes. We found that the simulation is really simple enough to use there. But we know that creating a sim that's just easy enough to use in basic classes would limit how this product could be used for you. And this created a situation where we needed to make a diverse simulation. The sim now allows for you to add or subtract complexity based on the environment you're in. So your lower level students can go through some things that holds their hands a little bit more than it would in the higher levels. We've actually seen this product during the beta period, as I've mentioned, used across a variety of classes. Some of the ones that jumped out to me, finance, money and banking. We had a real estate investments course use the simulation in it. And then a lot of our other standard sims that we see, things like strategy, or even an intro to MBA level class has used CapsimCore through the beta period. And what that really meant for us is we could create something that was flexible to be used across a multitude of classes. You can tailor this to your course and use it really across the curriculum. But it has to be engaging enough to excite students. And that's really where the design and development of this product came into play. We've seen this through our student test groups that we've brought in on site through these beta classes. We've had some incredible experiences thus far talking to students just about their excitement of seeing the results from round to round. We'll touch on this a little bit further when we talk about the scoring, but that was one thing that really jumped out to us in terms of excitement. Some other things in the beta classes that we really have seen have been the competitiveness within a class, even some of that trash talk that comes around from students wanting to excel above their other teams. The genuine level of excitement that we're seeing in students has been incredibly high thus far. And so our end goal is really to get your students excited about business. If we can do that, we can foster a classroom environment, whether it be on-site or digital, that has engaged and excited students that are looking to learn and look more into the field of business. So as we move into kind of the meat of this webinar, we'll be talking about some of these features. And the biggest excitement that we've seen so far about CapsimCore is what we'll walk through here. We've identified 6 things that we've heard the most positive feedback on thus far through the beta period and our early testing. And I want to talk to you a little bit about how you can use these to your benefit. The first one, both in chronological order of students entering into the simulation and what we'll be talking about today, is onboarding. And this is essentially the student training as they ramp up into a simulation. And for those of you who've seen other simulations, you know that getting students to understand the basics of the system and gain a grasp of what they need to do is one of the toughest early challenges you'll face. You get a lot of the situations where students don't understand how to start, or they're worried about making early mistakes, when the goal is to get them in and playing the simulation and learning from those errors. So in the training module, we really look to reduce that learning curve and help students get an idea of what they needed to do as early as possible. The onboarding system that we created walks the student through a training certification program, and they'll go through 3 stages of that: a beginner level, an intermediate level, and an advanced level certification. We know from our experience thus far that we can get students up the learning curve, onboarded and ready to make decisions in 45 minutes. We've tested this across a number of different methods, and these are the results we're seeing. We're seeing informed decision-making after that 45-minute part. And we're doing so through a really immersive method of training. Students are thrown into a sim-like environment where they face a task in each of the key departments. This has created great feedback for us in terms of students understand the exact decisions they need to make in the same interface type that they would make them, all while learning a little bit more about business. From there, we've translated that into how students actually play the simulation. And the first thing you see there is that students can make round decisions in as little as 20 to 40 minutes. One thing that we know is that we don't always have time to fit the simulation into a course. Sometimes we have to sneak it in. It has to be outside of the class at time. What we've done with CapsimCore is simplify that time that you need to spend making decisions so it can fit in a number of different ways. We've also tried to make things as uncomplicated and as intuitive as possible for the student. And this is why that time has really come down. By removing some of the user error with the software through the way that so that we can keep that learning very high without having to spend a ton of time in it. And I was actually talking to a professor last week. He's from Florida. He's teaching an intro-level finance course, and he was really amazed, in retrospect, how quickly his students were able to get through the simulation. In the early rounds, he said they were taking around an hour to work through the sim, but by the time the competition begun, some of the students were making decisions within 30 minutes, really quickly. Others, they would take a little deeper of a dive, jump into the data, and it was taking them up to 90 minutes. But as the rounds went on, by the end of the simulation, it was even more pronounced. You had teams that were really grasping the concepts, getting it, and they were able to make decisions in 15 to 20 minutes and still be successful. They had understood so much about what they were doing. And you still had other teams that were taking up to an hour to make decisions, but the bottom line is they're just grasping that information so quickly and so much better based on the user interface that they could really achieve great learning in a very small window. So we were really excited to hear this because we know that is one of those key challenges that you face. Finally, our third feature we're going to talk about is the Business Fundamentals e-textbook and quiz bundle. And this is available as an add-on feature within CapsimCore. And it's all done outside the simulation. We tie in an e-textbook that covers the fundamentals of business. We have 8 intro to business chapters. And then we have also 8 additional quizzes to accompany those chapters. But we haven't stopped there. As we'll see on the next slide, we'll go through some of those topics that are covered. But the sim platform really provides you with a one-stop shop to teach your class. If those questions in the pre-built quizzes don't do it for you, we also have added in the feature to create your own quizzes. You can create this content on your own and tie it into the sim platform extremely easily. So some of the features, some of these topics that are covered in the e-textbook are right here. And as I mentioned, there are 8 in total. Some of the key ones that we can take away, how a business creates goods and services to sell, how they keep track of the money, how it all works together, how to bring in social corporate responsibility and ethical decision-making into the daily lives of business managers. And I actually talked to a professor last week who wanted to use an exam in his class. And he had looked for a solution that would tie in with CapsimCore. And we actually came to a conclusion that he was really looking for a way to measure his students' understanding of business terminology. We can cover that. We have that pre-built in the question bank. We have 75 quiz questions at the start of our launch that you can use to tie in to create midterms, final exams, even quizzes that you just want to touch on and do check-ins on a student's learning. All of this is here for you. Moving on, the scoring system in CapsimCore has been redesigned, and it's been a ton of discussion from professors thus far in the beta period. Student performance in CapsimCore is measured alongside 5 key performance indicators. And students, to achieve a star each year, they just have to improve over these measures. If they do so, they get a star, period. It's as simple as that. It's really easy for students to understand the target that they have to reach. And these measures are all blended in with these KPIs for running a business. It really creates an environment that is competitive, that you can see, and you can clearly track where students are learning. In a recent test group we had, we bring students kind of from all different backgrounds in to test the validity of the product. And we had students from computer science, HR, psychology, theater backgrounds, a wide variety, all competing against each other. And the results were amazing. The students were so involved and engaged in the round-to-round results. I couldn't believe it. We would reveal the results after playing around, and you should have seen it. The smack talking, the excitement, the cheering, the laughing. The students that were performing poorly and extremely well, all engaged. The scoring was a huge part of that. They were able to see quickly, after processing their round, if they had achieved what they wanted to do. It allowed us to talk about sustainable growth, which is a key aspect of the world we live in right now. And by allowing the students to target just these 5 key metrics, they really understood what they needed to do to make their business successful. It's teaching them about business and some of these basic success measures in the business world. Debriefing results is also something that we've drastically upgraded in CapsimCore. This debrief report may be the most valuable of every feature that you come across. After each round, we will automatically generate a debrief report for you. This is based on the round decisions your students have made, and it provides you with a quick look at the results as well as some key historical information on a round-by-round basis. It really puts you in the position to be quickly prepared to talk about student results in your class. And we came about this idea for the debrief report through more professor conversations. We had a professor in the beta group, and he was wondering how he could really best understand his student results. This is a common question we get every day from professors like you, calling in, asking about the round that was just performed. More importantly, though, he wanted to help his students know how to best understand what they have done. He wanted to make sure they had that learning. So we talked for a while and identified really the key things he was considering. And these are things like he wanted a real quick way to see the big picture. But he also wanted to be able to dive deep into the key performance areas, those STAR measurements that I just mentioned. He also wanted the option to share the results with students. You know, is this something that they need to know about, and can this help them in the future? And also how to recover if they're just struggling in the simulation. So he really was looking for something to teach business both in the simulation platform and long term. That's how we got this. He wanted a solution that could help him look like a rock star in front of his class, and that's what the debrief report will allow him to do. Each round, headlines will be generated for you through the debrief report based on those sim decisions your students have made. They will see the cause and effect, and you'll be able to highlight that on a high level and have the choice to share that with students or keep it for yourself. The final feature that I want to discuss today is a brand new one to Capsim. It's called policy decisions. And the idea behind policy decisions is they provide you with a way to decrease the focus on a specific area, say finance, and really reduce the complexity there without removing the entirety of the learning behind that area. I was talking to a colleague just about 3 weeks ago, and he was a colleague of a customer that uses us, and he was really looking to find a way to use his simulation, to use a simulation in his marketing class. It was a lower level intro to marketing class that he was looking to implement it into. And we dove into some of the problems of why simulations aren't always a solution for him. The gist of it came down to sometimes there's too much focus placed on areas that he just didn't care about. And finance was an area that this really came up in. He didn't care about the individual ways that a student could raise money, whether it be issuing long-term debt, bonds, or buying back stock to do some funding within his plan. He really just focused on the budgeting aspect. He wanted to know how finance impacted marketing and vice versa. The decisions made in marketing, what would they mean for the budgets that finance placed? This is how we came to this concept of policy decisions. Students will make one decision for the entire department, choose if they want to have a conservative, balanced, or aggressive policy stance, and from there they'll move into seeing the effects. all the decisions are tied back to the way that they're performing in the simulation, and it's really clear that they can understand the high level without diving into the weeds. Finance is actually the first department that we have policy decisions for, but there are more coming down the road. So I'd love to hear from each of you about how you could possibly use this in your course. And that is actually a wrap for me. So before we kick it over to the Q&A section, Carter's going to talk a little bit about the CapsimCore Professor Challenge.
Thanks, Brendan, and we're probably going to kick it back to you during the question phase. As long as I have your brilliance here, I'll make use of it. I do want to remind everybody we do have, related to this product, the Professor Challenge. And anybody who's in there or who joins now will actually receive an additional 100 points for their attendance today. If you go to the link on the screen, you can register for the challenge. Alternatively, if you send us a question or a comment, we'd be happy to register you into the challenge itself. It's a great opportunity for you to get a hands-on look at CapsimCore, playing it as your students would play it. And then to make it more interesting and exciting, we're actually giving away 2 $5,000 scholarships in your name to the winners of each of the two competitions we have going on. Also, the top 5 performers after that will win free CapsimCore licenses for your entire class. I did have one professor remind me that they had 1,600 students in their class. And I said, you know what? Absolutely. This is the offer. This is the offer we're making. If you type challenge in the chat window, then we'll set it up for you. And thank you very much. Now we've got a few questions that have come in, and I want to address those now. One was, does CapXM work with the simulation with CapsimCore? You want to take that, or you want me to?
Yeah, sure. I can take that on. Currently, CapXM does not work directly with CapsimCore. We don't have that assessment solution that is built directly into the sim. However, as I was mentioning, we've had a professor actually already use this bank of quiz questions that are generated just by the add-on package that he used in his class for a final exam. So there are some alternative assessment solutions that we have right now. That's the basis of it.
Okay. Another one was LMS integration. I assume this is single sign-on and/or gradebook.
You can take
so yeah, I'll say we've implemented LTI across our products and have implemented single sign-on with your LMS system. And just talk to us if you're interested in that. We've connected with most of the major ones by now. Obviously, each school requires just a little bit of customization, but happy to set that up for you guys. Is this only for the business course?
No, I would say it's most definitely not just for intro to business level courses. As I mentioned in some of the beta classes that we've already had, finance, money and banking, strategy even, there was an intro to MBA class that used CapsimCore. One of the ways that professors in these classes are using CapsimCore is to either tone down the complexity through the financial policy decisions, turning them on or off. With that, you can create an opportunity to perhaps use in a marketing class, as I mentioned. Or you can actually spend more time focusing on the simulation. So some of the scenarios that we have that can be built into the sim can add complexity and make this a little bit more complicated for students and put them in a different scenario outright.
All right, excellent. Now the next question has been asked 4 different times. Is this simulation a replacement for Foundation or Capstone?
And with that, I would also say no, most definitely not. CapsimCore is a very different beast than a Foundation or Capstone, as we know, is as many of you know, is positioned towards those capstone courses, those end of simulation, or I'm sorry, end of curriculum courses, whether they be on the lower level, or I'm sorry, on the undergrad or the grad level. Now, Foundation is aimed a little bit more towards lower level classes, but this also acts as a strategy simulation. CapsimCore is designed kind of before that, or for different courses throughout the curriculum. And the way that that works is really through the user interface and the level of design that goes into some of those additional features. Like I mentioned, it's a lot simpler to make decisions in CapsimCore based on the ranges that are built in that essentially remove some of that user error for students. But there's also a lot more information that you can glean from the interface alone. Whereas I would take a look at something like Foundation, and I can do a much deeper dive into the results. The same goes for Capstone in that sense. So this is by no means intended to replace either of those simulations, no.
Okay. Now we've got a couple questions about additional information on functionality. One is more general, and what makes CapsimCore better suited for the intro-level courses as opposed to our other simulations?
Yeah, and I would say it really comes down to the way that students learn information there and actually apply that information to the decisions. I'd love a simulation. You'll really see that our sliders, and instead of having to enter information, enter those figures in, we have sliders with preset ranges that specify what the student can actually choose to do. Now, this automatically kind of builds in a much more intuitive way for students to make decisions. So some of that learning that comes through some of that learning that you need to have in order to make strong business decisions is already kind of built in, and it really helps the student up the learning curve in the early going while they're still learning business concepts that they can then apply.